The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4167. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4167, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to legacy, second engrossment.
Recognize the member from Martin, Representative Gunther, to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Legacy Omnibus Bill is a great bill. The bill contains fiscal year 2019 appropriations from the Outdoor Heritage Fund and supplemental appropriations from the Clean Water and Arts and Cultural Heritage Funds, with that I will yield to Representative Fabian to discuss Article 1.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, a couple of years ago I was accused of having a prop on the House floor, so it was a Christian stick at the time as well. Thank you, Representative Gunther. I would like to just briefly run through the Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council portion of the bill. And members, just so you know, I've not forgotten Representative Lilly. I talked to him a little while ago before we got our floor session started, and he wanted me to make sure that I reminded you that he knew that I'm a really great guy. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but. And also, I got to say a special thank you to Mark Johnson and Joe Pavelko and Sandy Smith and Becky Enfield. They do great work for the council, doing a whole bunch of things. And a special shout out to Chair Bob Anderson from International Falls. He's done a great job of helping us get a bill put together to bring to the legislature. And with that, I will just do a quick overview, and then we can talk more about the specifics later. This year, the Council focused a greater degree on prairie region needs for restoration and enhancement of prairie, grassland, and wetland habitats on existing public lands. We've tried to make sure that we are using our dollars wisely. We've listened to the concerns of the DNR, for example, telling us that they don't have enough money to take care of what they've got. So we're trying to make a shift and spend more money on restoration and enhancement. We've got $15 million in the bill for the CREP program, and we've talked about that in the last couple of years for the rim buffer program and other parts. The other thing that I'm particularly proud of in this bill is in this bill we have $11.7 million for the Conservation Partners Legacy Grant Program. And this is a program that, if you're not familiar with it, is extremely beneficial to our local NGOs. You know, it might be your for example, the Rosa River chapter of the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. If they have some sort of a project for enhancement or restoration, they can go fill out basically a one-page application and get up to $50,000 for their project. It might be something for your local watershed or something like that. Those local LGUs can also apply for these dollars. A couple other things that we've really tried to focus on along that same line is in the bill. We have a number of local projects, for example, Morrison County SWCD, the Fox Lake Conservation League, which does a great job of advocating for their projects. We've got a moose project in there by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association up in the northern region, trying to enhance the moose population. We've got things in here for Dakota County, Hennepin County, the Lake Superior Steelhead Association, Shell Rock River Watershed District has got a project in this bill. The Anoka County Parks, and then that one is one that's special to Lessard Council member Ron Shera, has to do with the Lake George Dam and the Rum River Erosion project. The City of Hallock, Minnesota, in my district, put in a request for a dam repair and removal, and we funded that. The Minnehaha Creek Watershed. So this is a good bill. We're trying to get some more money out to these smaller groups that historically maybe haven't gotten as big a slice of the piece of the pie, and we're trying to do that for them. And I'm sure that we'll discuss this more as the day goes on. With that, I'd like to turn to Representative Torkelson. Thank you.
He will yield. Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Chair Gunther and Chair Fabian for your work on this bill. Tip of the hat to our colleague, Representative Lilly, who's not with us, but I'd like to thank him for his work on Legacy, too. As you may recall, last year's Legacy water bill Clean Water Fund, $22 million was utilized for soil and water conservation districts. There was a provision in law last year that stated if there is a surplus this year, that $22 million of the surplus would be rolled back into the Clean Water Fund. That's exactly what has happened. That plus the additional revenue available puts us at about $26 million total of revenue available for the Clean Water Fund this year. The Clean Water Fund, Clean Water Council made recommendations. I've taken a close look at those and just made a few adjustments and presented those to you in the bill today. I'll just run through them briefly and we can always answer questions later. A number of projects. The first one, the Forever Green Project, funded through the Department of Agriculture but housed at the University of Minnesota, $500,000. Point source implementation grants at PFA. This was a replacement of funds that were cut last year of $1.25 million. $10,000 for the Pollution Control Agency to operate the Clean Water Council. $1 million for DNR's Forest of the Future project that was recommended by the Clean Water Council. One Watershed, One Plan. These are projects at Bowser. $4.3 million. Surface and Drinking Water, $3.5 million. A Conservation Reserve Program, the CREP program, $10 million. That is also funded in Losard Sams for $15 million. Then we have the Soil and Water Conservation District's cost share funding of $5 million. But this is important because that funding is available statewide. The CREP program is not statewide. It only covers 53 counties. These cost share dollars in this particular provision are available statewide, so they're useful for those non-CREP counties in the state of Minnesota. Decision Support System for Irrigation Efficiencies is a new program that would be housed at the University of Minnesota, again funded through Bowser. And finally, the Clean Water Return on Investment Plans. That is a project at the University of Minnesota to give us a better idea of whether or not we are investing these clean water dollars well. With that, members, I urge your support for this portion of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to turn it back over to Chair Gunther.
Representative Gunther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Fabian and Representative Torkelson. I will finish this with Article 3. The Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund has some money at the bottom line, and we allocated that to a few projects we were unable to fund last year, as well as a few other projects that are good for the state of Minnesota. I will go through these projects and let you know what they are. $300,000 for the Lake Superior Centric Authority for a River Systems Exhibit. This is the various things that are in a river system, and it's Representative Murphy's great contribution to our bill. From Representative Mahoney, we have $150,000 for the China Friendship Garden in Phelan Park. They raised over $1 million this summer, and they plan to raise the remainder of the funds. We are just showing them that we care enough by giving them $150,000 in planning money. $50,000 to Ampers for Veterans Voices, a program on the Korean War. That's the forgotten war that most people don't think about or know about. I hope it's still in the history books, but I'm not sure. $150,000 for the Preston Historical Society for the Preston Grain Elevator restoration. And $100,000 for the Litchfield Opera House for updates on the walls and electrical system. $10,000 for the Grove City, for restoration of the Grove City Mill. $60,000 to Capital Arts Exhibit Advisory Committee to support the new committee and providing staffing to provide arts in the Capitol itself. And this is a very important thing. And $500,000 to the Minnesota Humanities Center to support the work on women's suffrage, the 100th anniversary commemoration of that women's suffrage, and I think Minnesota had a great deal to do with that. And while I like to thank a lot of people, Allison Robel, Rebecca Mead, Mary Mullen, John Walsh, Brad Hagemeyer, Janelle Taylor, Nancy Conley, and Callie Lehman. Without Callie, I wouldn't go very far. And I want to really thank my vice chair, Sandy Lehman, and my new lead, Mary Murphy. It'll be a big shoes to fill, but I'm sure you can do it because you sure taught me a lot before I got started. And I'd like to have a shout out to Leon Lilly, a good friend, and we miss him. And with that, I would like to ask you all to vote green. Thank you.